All right, everyone. So, welcome to Film Under Quarantine, presented by the Film Society of Northwestern Pennsylvania. Today, we're talking about Slay the Dragon, the new gerrymandering documentary. We are joined by an awesome panel. We've got Lorraine Dolan, Don Goldstein, Luann Salga, and if everybody could say hello and share
Oh,
your
that's right. I
initial
was supposed to say
thoughts.
Lorraine Dolan.
Hi, Luann Salaga.
And the guy is Dawn.
That's me.
Well, so my name is Lorraine. I was a member of the League of Women Voters in Erie County. And so one day we must have gotten an email or something, and I went out to Allegheny College and I met Dawn, and they were organizing fair districts. And they were trying to get coordinators for the various counties. And I did what I often do, volunteered with another person to coordinate, and had no idea really what I was getting into at that point. But I worked with this other gentleman for a while, but then became the sole person for 16 months. And I was telling John that, I mean, it was very intense. I mean, I basically lived and breathed fair districts and the subject of gerrymandering. And it was quite the experience. So what we tried to do during that 16 months was really get the word out about what gerrymandering is. Nobody knew what gerrymandering was. And I think Don will speak to this, that we were quite successful, because at the end of that 16 months, a lot more people knew about. I think we did some 30 plus community lectures or speaking forums. We had a group of speakers that would go out to different venues and talk to groups. And in the end, it did fail when it went to go for a vote. But, you know, I thought, and Dawn and Luann can talk about this too, but I thought that it really happened the way that it should happen. I mean, fair districts worked with the legislators. There was a compromise negotiated. It was open. It was transparent. They had people that came and experts that came and gave testimony, and everybody knew what was happening. So I thought the process was good. But then when it went to a vote, they had what happened was, they call it decorating the Christmas tree. All of these people from both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party added on all these amendments. And it was so close to the time for the vote that there was no way everybody could read those and understand them and know them. So the vote just failed. It's like the Christmas tree toppled over because it had too many ornaments. And then, you know, there was a lull in the action, and then the group picked it up again and continued to work towards, I think initially it was getting the congressional map passed with a bill so that it would be permanent. You know, the change made to the congressional map through the League of Women Voters lawsuit would become permanent, and it would continue to be a fair map for voters, or a fairer map for voters. But as far as the film goes, did you want me to comment on that now, or did you want me to?
Maybe
Okay.
we'll go to Don for
Okay.
his background. That sounds good. Yeah, introduce yourselves and then we'll get into the film. Sounds
Okay.
Okay. So I'm a retired college professor. I taught economics at Allegheny College in Meadville for 25 years. I actually got into working on redistricting reform because my mother told me to. She lives in Pittsburgh.
I never knew that, Don.
Yeah. Sometime shortly before that meeting where Lori and I met,
Yeah.
my mom had attended a public meeting in Pittsburgh that was hosted by Franco Harris. And at that meeting, they had a lot of people because Franco brings out a crowd. And there were some folks from Fair Districts PA there, and they kind of went through what the issue is and what the problem is and what we could do about it. And my mom told me, this is something you should get involved in. So I did. We we had that meeting where we kind of got the northwestern part of the state organized. Lori agreed to head up the Erie group. We had somebody who took the Crawford County group. I think we had about maybe 4 or 5 counties at the start. And I agreed to coordinate the region. I'll stop right there, and I'll wait for my opportunity to talk about the movie.
Great, thank you. Luann, if you could introduce yourself and give us some background as well.
Yeah, I'm Luann Salaga. I lived in Erie for 34 years, and we moved down here 16 years ago. My husband was going to start a program, but moving back home, this is where we're in Mercer County in Sharpsville, and this is home for us. This is where I grew up. So it was just kind of a bit of a test to try and figure out what I was going to do down here once I got here. So I worked the 2012 election as a bucket list activity. I worked the campaign for the presidential campaign. And so I became involved then with the party and did all the things that they do, phone banked and canvassed and all that sort of stuff. And then a group of friends got together and we went to a League of Women Voters presentation on gerrymandering. So I was intrigued by that presentation. And so lo and behold, I got an email. I signed up for more information, and within a week I had an email from Fair Districts PA, and they were going to have a conference call. So I just joined in. They gave me the phone number, so I just joined in to listen. After a couple conference calls later, they asked me to be Mercer County coordinator. So I tentatively said yes. And that was 3 years ago. So that's where I'm at. I've been working at it, and I'm passionate about this. And I struggled to find volunteers here in Mercer County. It's very rural, very, very conservative, and people didn't trust, and people didn't really want to work. So I've been, me and I and 4 other occasional volunteers have done the job down here. So that's where we're at here. And that's my background. My education, I have a degree in music education, but I never really did that much with that. I substitute taught for 30 years. Not what I had in mind, but that's kind of what happened. But at any rate, that's how I became involved with Fair Districts, and I'm pleased to say that I coordinated a number of things, and I can count, including the polling place outreach, the 4-county polling place outreach. I think I can claim about 1,000 petition signatures. So
Yeah,
that's
good.
what I do. I get petition signatures. So, and I talk and bump things up and run a Facebook page and do the best I can down here, but it's mostly me.
Mhm.
So
That
but I'm-
point, Luann, about the petition is a good one, because anybody that signs a petition, you don't have to go to someone that's holding a petition to sign it. You can go to the website. Then you get on that list and you are contacted and kept updated with what's going on. And that's very useful.
Yes, it is. That's how they got me. That
Mhm.
one email, I was intrigued. And when I discovered the links between gerrymandering and the election of 2016, I couldn't believe it. You mean I spent 8 weekends in a row in the summertime walking and knocking in communities around my area for no reason. We didn't have a chance.
Mhm.
So
That's the
I
thing
was,
that I'm sorry, Luann, go ahead.
no, what were you going to say, Don? I was waiting for
Well, I
you.
was just going to say that that's the thing that the movie does such a good job of showing. I mean, in Slay the Dragon, you just get this picture of Katie Fahey and her team of volunteers, which, like Fair Districts PA, is an all-volunteer effort. Just going around talking to people. The volunteers themselves are from every walk of life, and the folks they're talking to, oftentimes they just, they can't believe it when you tell them, well, this is what happens. Actually the politicians are drawing their own voting lines. And that's why nobody runs against them, because the incumbents have districts that are designed expressly to be safe for them and to be safe for their party. People
I think we're the only country in the world that does it that way, aren't we, Don?
I don't know, Lori, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. And the notion that, well, no, actually, you don't have to do it that way, that you could go back to what American democracy is supposed to be about and recreate rules of the game that really do allow everybody's vote to count equally. People are excited about that. And I think, as you saw in the movie, it's a very nonpartisan kind of an appeal. Some of us spent, I believe, Luann, you were there with us at the Crawford County Fair this past summer.
Yes.
We spent an entire week at the Crawford County Fair, which is a place that about 75,000 people go through in the course of a week. And you really see, how rural the area is. I mean, Meadville is the big city, baby. And folks are coming in from all around to go to the fair, and they're streaming past the booth, and we're talking to people and schmoozing with people. And people are going by with their MAGA hats and their Trump t-shirts, and we're talking to them about gerrymandering. And they're like, that's just not right. And we're saying, that's what we've been saying. We need to really drain this swamp, because the politicians are, they're not working for us. We're working for them. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. It has a tremendous appeal. And the movie did a great job of just showing how that worked.
I mean, it's great to hear all of your passions, and I think that comes through for sure in the film as well, because it is such a difficult battle. So I'm curious if maybe we can just start off with some general feelings on the film, what you felt like it got right, what you felt like it got wrong. Give me kind of your overall critique, and then we can start jumping into some of the struggles of working to eliminate this bizarre situation in America.
Well, for me, that opening quote was very startling and also very powerful, I thought. Was it John Adams? It was the quote, there never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. I'm like,
I can quote that. I wrote it down, Lori. You want me to read it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, John Adams said, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide.
And how did you feel about that? I felt like, well, we are going to be that democracy that survives. That's the way I felt.
I felt that what you see in the movie is the way that in a democratic system, every set of safeguards that are created eventually get subverted. The stakes are very high.
Mm-hmm.
And so those in a position to kind of buttress their own positions of power and influence use the system to tweak the rules, change the rules, and next thing you know, democracy is committing suicide. It's not actually suicide, it's more like murder, but let's not quibble about that.
Oh, that's my dog. I thought the story was very familiar, though. Didn't you, Luann and Dawn? As far as very similar to what we experienced in Pennsylvania, doing the same kinds of work. And
Yeah. Yes.
I like
definitely.
that shot of the back of the truck where they had all those petitions that they were taking to the state capitol. I never, we knew numbers and we knew how many resolutions we had and how many petitions we had signed, but to see them all in that truck like that, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, they slaved. I think they worked rest stops. I remember seeing the news reports. They would park at a rest stop on the major highways and call people to them. They really worked their tails off to get 400,000 signatures.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm bragging about 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, it was
statewide,
amazing.
we have many Luanns out there gathering signatures, and I think we're in the 100,000 neighborhood at this point. The big difference, and the thing that I felt so jealous of when I saw that truck full of signatures in Michigan is that in Pennsylvania, our petitions are merely advisory. We are asking, we are begging the legislature to take this issue seriously and to take a step back from their narrow self-interest and do something about it. Those signatures in Michigan had some legal bite. They had to go through, as we saw in the film, they had to go through a harrowing state court case in order to be allowed to go forward with it. But Michigan has something that many states have, but Pennsylvania doesn't, which is the ballot initiative, the direct referendum ballot initiative. California is kind of the mother of all redistricting reform movements, and that's how they fixed it, was through Proposition, I can't remember what the number was in California.
Right.
But it was while Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor.
And it was Democrats who were gerrymandering the
Yeah.
state.
Yeah, I was going to say the film, it's probably because of the time period that the film was made, but it does make it seem like the Republican Party, had access to this technology and this idea through this person, and they kind of took it to the next level. But should we be under any illusion that if the Democrats were in power at the same time, that they would not have done the same thing? Or is
Project Red Map is what you're talking about?
Yeah. No, I think that.
Yeah, well, Maryland.
In Pennsylvania,
Maryland is Democrat.
In Pennsylvania, there is a way to do it. And that's what we're trying to do, isn't it? Get our state legislators to pass certain bills so that we can go forward and get it on the ballot.
Eventually, right?
And that's the difference. Is that Janice that was talking there?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's the difference, is that in Pennsylvania, we have to go through the legislature in order to get to the direct referendum because it involves amending the state constitution. And what the Constitution says about the way to get it amended is that first the legislature has to pass a bill that would initiate the process, and the same bill has to be passed in 2 consecutive sessions. Once that happens, then the people get their say. The people get to vote in a direct referendum. In Michigan, California, and some other states, you don't need that. You just need to gather signatures, as they did in the film, and we saw that. And as long as the signatures are approved, you get on the ballot, and then you can just take your case right to the people. So there's that extra step here that can be very frustrating.
Right. I know I've been to, Kurt Sonny is my state representative, and I have been to his office. And I must say, he listened, and but he didn't sound like he would ever vote for it. I know he is Republican, but I know we just have to keep trying and trying. The Supreme Court did appoint a commission to come up with regular districts, which are now in place. But as soon as the census is finished next year, that won't exist anymore because we don't have the representatives voting to put it on, to be able to do it. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
well, the judge drawn maps weren't intended. They were always temporary. That's
Right.
by the Constitution. They step in the event of an emergency, and nothing there is permanent. So they last until the November election is over with, and then 2021 we go back to the same old process that got us the bad maps in the first place.
That's right. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania said this particular map, and it was the congressional map, by the way, not the state legislative map, but this particular map is unconstitutional by Pennsylvania law. So this map has to be replaced with something else. And they did replace that because the legislature declined to do so themselves, which was the initial court order.
And
But
that's why you want the legislative action, because you want a permanent fix.
want a permanent change in the process,
Right.
which for those legislative maps does require a state constitutional amendment.
So is this cycle the closest that we've gotten to fixing this in Pennsylvania, or have we been closer before historically?
I think this is the closest. Wouldn't you say? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was coordinator for Erie County, we never convinced any of the Republican representatives to support the bills because they were the political party in power. But then in the end, really neither party supported the solution that was proposed.
Yeah, it was really complicated. I mean, the bills last session were co-sponsored by dozens of both Democratic and Republican legislators. As Lori alludes to, the closer we got to a vote, the softer some of that support seemed to get. And apparently that's fairly typical. But we came very close. We just ran out of time. We actually had a very important ally in the Senate, the Republican chair of the State Government Committee in the Senate last session, not this current session, actually said, you know, this is reasonable. This is something we should do. And he worked with us to compromise and craft a bill that came out onto the floor of the Senate. And that was the closest we came.
And he even publicly stated in 2010 that the map wasn't fair.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he made that statement. But was he not then removed for some bad behavior?
That was an unfortunate
Yes.
episode, yeah, in this never-ending drama. He was removed. He resigned for some misbehavior.
Mm-hmm.
So you said we came close. I'm curious, you know, if you could do it over again next cycle, what would we need? You know, what would our voters need to do you think, to succeed? What were we missing this time around? Is it an education thing? Is it a numbers of volunteers? You know,
Yeah,
obviously it's all volunteers, as you said. So, you know, the resources and the funding are not in this space, of course. It's with the other side. But maybe if you had a wish list, what can we do better next time around, do you think?
I think that's a tough question, because
it's a big question.
there were groups that wanted the bill as it was originally stated, and that's what they supported on the Democratic side. And then, you know, the way government works, good government is compromise, you know, where you have people come together and you have discussion and you have experts testify, and then you come to a compromise. So not everybody gets what they want, but you take a step forward. And that's where we were. We wanted to take that step forward. And then, like I said, these amendments started to be added, which just, there were so many. I mean, how many were there? There were like 250 or something
Hundreds.
like that.
Yeah.
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 From both
Is-
sides.
You know,
Is that a tactic?
in the Senate bill, there were
Yeah.
600
Yeah.
scam
Yeah.
amendments and 300 from Republicans and 300 from Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
is this a tactic to sink the bill? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Toppling the
And
Christmas
the key,
tree.
the
Yeah.
key amendment was a real kick in the gut. It was basically a poison pill amendment that had been planned secretly by a group of Republican state senators, some of whom had been telling us right up to the last moment, "Oh yeah, we're going to support the bill. We're going to support the bill." And then they ended up in the forefront of bringing this amendment in.
At the last moment, the very last
Yeah, it was
moment.
basically to, in addition to having an independent commission to draw the legislative lines, we'll also throw in there that it'll draw the state judicial lines as well. Well, the state judicial elections, as you know, are statewide elections.
Mhm.
And so there's a sense of grievance there among many Republican legislators from the more rural areas that because the population centers tend to be, basically Pittsburgh and Philly areas and Erie as well, tend to be more Democratic, that the statewide judicial posts have a tendency to reflect the overall statewide party breakdowns. And they didn't like that. So throwing that in, it was a completely different issue. They knew darn well that there was no way that Fair Districts PA could ever support that.
However,
We would have to withdraw our support, and we did.
our Erie County state senators were willing to vote for that. But we
Yeah.
didn't want them to vote for that
Yeah,
because
right.
it was all going to be clumped together. And, voters don't always read things that carefully,
Yeah.
to know that they're voting for two separate things.
Mm-hmm. But I want to go
And-
back to John's question for just a moment. What will it take? And I think the generic answer is pressure, power, because every route except for the judicial route going through the courts, every route has to go through the legislature in Pennsylvania. When legislators in both parties see this as something they have to get on board with in order to keep their seats, in order to keep their constituents happy, then it'll happen. And, there's kind of a catch-22 there, because first they gerrymander the districts to make themselves safe, and then you have to find a way to make them unsafe or feel unsafe. But we've been chipping away at this for the years that Luann and Lori talk about, gradually getting more signatures on that petition. We now have, I jotted it down before we started today, 381 different municipal and county bodies in Pennsylvania, representing about 70% of the population, have had the local government body vote in favor of an independent citizens commission. So either the county commissioners or the city council or whatever the relevant body is. 23 of the counties in the state have voted for it that way. You gradually create a climate in which you hope that it just becomes impossible to ignore.
Well, I think, there's like this wave going across the whole country, and the league nationally has come out with this initiative of people-powered maps to go state by state, whatever way they have to make the changes. Like Don was saying, in different states, these changes occur in different ways. But when I used to talk to the representatives, I would say, don't you want to be on the right side of history on this subject? I mean, to be that person that voted for it because it's the right thing to do.
Mhm.
You know, it's fair for both parties. It's fair even for the people in office, because the people in office, they might want to actually listen to their constituents and act in a certain way that is not directed by their party leaders. And if they do that, then they're at risk of being gerrymandered out of their own seat.
And it happens.
It does. I mean, they
Yeah.
just get rid of that person and get somebody else in there that's going to
Yeah.
listen to these party heads. And so there's that kind of control, you know, where they're controlling people that we elect. And I think the people did start to become more aware too when they saw that there were these elections and there was nobody running against these other people. Just like Congressman Kelly had he had no opponent for a little short time there until Ron DeNicola came along and the maps were changed. And then he had to actually run against somebody. And then he'll have an opponent this round too. But people don't want to run for office if they know that they're not going to win. They don't want to spend the time. They don't want to spend the money. When they know ahead of time, they're not going to win this election. It's just, it's a quagmire.
One of the things we've struggled with, just to piggyback on what Lori was saying, in trying to create that bear hug from the populace that would get some legislative action. What we've struggled to communicate to our fellow citizens just how important this issue is for everything, whatever it is that you care about.
Mhm.
Are you interested in reproductive rights? Are you interested in economic
environment.
development?
Right.
Are you, whatever it is that you're interested in, it runs up against gerrymandering, because the officials, the elected officials in a gerrymandered system, don't have to be accountable. They don't have to care. They don't have to pay any attention to compromise, to taking the views of their constituents across a wide range of views seriously. They just don't have to. All they have to do is appeal to their narrow base, and those districts are drawn so that can get you elected. And the movie did a great job of showing that in Wisconsin. I learned a lot about that Wisconsin case through the film, and it was sobering. It was really sobering. Wisconsin, a big union state, had an anti-union so-called right-to-work law pushed through the legislature right around the time that they got their 2011 gerrymandered maps, and it didn't matter what the people did. The whole state
The
rose
same
up in
thing with
revolt.
the water problem in Flint.
Yeah.
That was also controlled.
That's right. So one of the things that we say as our little sound bites when we have to stick to a sound bite instead of an hour-long panel is until this changes, nothing changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, the obvious question is, why do we allow politicians to do this work? I mean, it's mind-boggling as soon as you learn anything about gerrymandering. I'm gonna unmute everybody that's been listening very kindly, and we can jump in with more comments. Yeah, I guess I'm curious, after watching the film, do you feel that the makeup of the independent group that they were trying to put together, the main story, do you think that's a good model for like best case scenario for other states to follow as far as drawing these?
What they were working towards, or how they did it, the process?
Yeah, I guess the one that was successful. Do you think that, you know, they had, it seemed to be pretty fairly split between the parties, and then there were some, you know, constituents that were involved as well, some independent
Right.
people as well. Is that what
Yeah,
we
so those,
need to go for?
I think so. I mean, this all kind of goes back to the California solution that Governor Schwarzenegger helped to bring in. But I think that the idea of having an independent commission that has designated seats, some Republican, some Democrat, and some either independent or third party, given the nature of our political system, which is structured to be dominated by these two main parties, I think it's a good approach to take. It has been a bone of contention with those against that type of reform, just how independent we could expect such a body to be. But our view is that everybody has a point of view, but not everybody is self-interested. The politicians we know have a self-interest in drawing gerrymandered districts. And even though independent commissioners may be Republicans, they may be Democrats, they may be Greens or whatever, they can at least get together like people do, for example, in a jury in a court trial. They all have their biases, they all have their priors, but they come in there, they have a charge that tells them here's what you need to take account of. And 95% of the time, they come to a decision that everybody's happy with, or at least can live with.
Right. At least improved.
Yeah.
All right. So if anyone would like to jump in with any questions or comments on the film, the floor is open. Anybody?
Just a comment about the film. It made me excited because I saw a way that it can happen, though Pennsylvania isn't the state that's going to have that way. But after the 2018 election, Michigan and a few other states were able to get rid of gerrymandering because they had it on the ballot and the voters passed it. So if we could get it somewhere. My question at this point is, what are the plans going forward in terms of getting more petitions signed, getting people to speak up, or send emails to their legislators, kind of trying to put pressure on them? Is there any plan in the works? I know, so we don't have an election, so we can't stand at the polls. So what's going to happen?
Yeah, that part of it, standing at the poll and shaking people's hands and putting a petition in their hands, is that ain't happening this year, is it?
I don't know. They're still training the poll workers, preparing them.
Yeah.
But
we can't.
Well, no, I mean,
at least for the primary,
right?
We can't. In the fall, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
We could be optimistic.
As far as outreach and who should interested parties get a hold of, I think is kind of what Janice is speaking towards. Yep. I guess I'm curious, when does the cycle of work start up next and things?
Well, one thing that we are live with is what we're calling Know Before You Vote campaign. Fair Districts has surveyed all of the candidates for the primary elections, and we'll do the same thing again in the fall for the generals, asking them to respond to two very simple questions. What do you think about an independent citizens commission? And what do you think about changing the rules in a more general way to make the process more fair and to define what that means? And if you go to fairdistrictspa.com and you click on take action, there's a button that you'll get to that says Know Before You Vote, and you can just put in your legislator's name or district number, and you can find out whether they've responded to the petition or to the survey. If so, what their position is. So people should check that out. Now, if your legislator, when you do that, hasn't responded, or if they have and you don't like what they said, there's a link right there in the web page to send them an email. So that gives everybody a quick and easy way to find out what your legislator is doing and let them know what you think about it.
But you can also visit your legislator. People I think are a little bit afraid to do that. They're just people like you and me. And, you can make an appointment and go in and talk to them and ask them, why don't you support this, and get a conversation going. We always ask them at our legislative luncheons. We always ask questions about fair districting. And then we're planning, and hopefully we will be able to do this, a debate between the candidates, the pre-primary debate for the candidates for the state Senate seat 49. And you can be sure that there will be a gerrymandering question.
Great.
And then also at the general election, same with the Congress, the congressional seat when that rolls around in November. But we did all those things. We go in and visit with them. We meet in front of township councils, try to get them to promote a resolution. We do have one in Erie County. We were one of the first counties in Pennsylvania too, I think.
I think it was the first, Lori.
The first, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we did, like I said, 35 plus talks to various groups, some very large groups. We wrote letters to the editor. That's something that the average person can do, is write a letter to the editor, reach people that way.
So what I'm getting is basically that it's like there's not really a cycle that just never stops. The work never stops.
Right. That's why I said it's very intense,
So just jump on the train whenever you can.
But vote for the candidates that are going to support the things you that are important to you. So if they're not supporting fair districts, don't give them your vote. You will have a choice, say, for the state Senate seat in Erie County. So ask the candidates that question and see what their answers are. I was wondering, Janice, what Kurt Sonny said about why he didn't want to support an independent commission.
I think it came down to that he's Republican and the Republicans aren't supporting it. Though he was trying to be very slick.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the end, he did say, one thing he said is, I do appreciate people contacting me and telling me where they stand. And if you can get people to send me emails saying they are in favor of it, I will consider that. It was the only positive thing he said in the meeting.
My representative is Brad Roy. He said he would never support it. And if there was a bill that he would support, we wouldn't recognize it because it would be so different.
Yeah.
What he proposed.
Right. Say anything like that.
Yeah.
No, not. But I think he's just slick. He thinks he's slick.
It's like what Don was saying about pressure and power, right? If your job is threatened, you may actually have to do something outside of what the party line is, right?
Well, that's what Don was saying about the votes, how people were supporting the bills. But then when it comes to an actual vote on the floor, sometimes then that vote doesn't materialize because now they're in front of all their associates there in the legislature, and maybe they will and maybe they won't. But
it should be a good moment. It should be a good historical moment. And I think would have been more powerful if the coronavirus epidemic hadn't inconveniently intervened. But it's still there.
We also
Both parties have something to fear from the current situation, because due to the kind of arcane rules that govern the congressional elections versus the state legislative elections and the redistricting in each of those areas. After the 2020 census next year, the Democrats will actually be in a position to gerrymander those state legislative seats. So the whip hand is going to be the Democrats. And the reason for that is simply that the Democrats at the moment control the state Supreme Court. And the state Supreme Court typically appoints the fifth and deciding member of the so-called Legislative Reapportionment Committee that the party leaders otherwise appoint their 2 representatives each to. So the Republicans are afraid of that.
There's also a
And the
chance
Democrats,
that
many of them, I'm afraid, are drooling over it, the opportunity.
the Senate or the House could flip too with the
Yeah,
election.
it could. On the other hand, the congressional districts are drawn differently. The congressional districts just get drawn by a simple act of the legislature. And because the Republicans control the legislature, they will be able to continue to gerrymander the congressional districts. And the Democrats fear that. So it's a situation where, you know, it's easy to see that both parties they're heading towards each other. There's quite a train wreck coming up. And it should be an opportunity where some compromise is in their interest, given enough pressure from the public.
And so I am going to go see my legislature next week. And so what is the most important question I could ask?
Who is yours, Pamela?
Senator Laughlin.
Laughlin. Okay, he was always, what he would always tell me is he was looking at this and considering it and talking to people about it and trying to get, you know, come to the right answer. It was almost, I felt like we had a little discussion about it because I felt like he was kind of stringing me along. He wanted me to think that he was going to support it, but then in the end, he never did. I don't know. What do you think a good question would be, Luann and Don?
What do you think,
Yes.
Luann?
We asked them at the legislative luncheon, and they, you know, they're not in favor.
Well, the fact is, we really don't have a democracy anymore. I think I would put it that way because of the, not completely because of the gerrymandering, but it was a big part of it that knocked out competition. And sorry.
Well, if you don't have somebody opposing you in the election, then there's really, you don't have a democracy then. There's no choice to be made.
Yes, thank you. The phone, my landline interrupted me there. Yeah, there's just so many ways that these seats are safe. There's no competition. Like Lori said, who in their right mind would spend the money when they know they can't win? And I heard it said that, actually, I think it was David Daley had said that the GOP the unintended outcome of this gerrymander is that they're pretty much a slave to the base. And they have no choice if they want to stay in power. And all those things that tie up together for a non-representative legislature. We have, the Franklin and Marshall poll that was taken last fall said that 67% of Pennsylvanians want this independent citizens commission. 66% were Democrats. 64%, I think, were Republicans, 63 or 64 Republicans, and 78% of independents. But do you know how many legislators were in support? Just 22%. That is a non-responsive legislature. So I think that, go ahead, Don.
Well, I think that's the key point, Luann. And for somebody like Laughlin, I think because of the nature of the political situation in Erie, he has an unusually competitive district. So I think maybe, Pamela, the key question I would ask him is, what do you think your constituents want? Here's this poll. Do you think Erie voters are any different from this? How is this going to play?
Right, because he's facing an election now, and there's a pretty good bet that both of the people running in the primary do support the Fair Districts Commission.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. John, I hear you banging around over there. Do you have anything to add, John Vanko?
Am I muted?
No, it's just checking you.
All right, I didn't know if I was muted. No, it was a good film. It was well done. The way that the story was told in a kind of comprehensive way was very effective. And it's scary. What can I say?
There was
I was kind of amazed. I'm sorry. I was just amazed when they described how easy it was, why they targeted Pennsylvania first and foremost, because we're easy. We had no ethics, no boundaries. Any amount of money can come into our elections. There's no oversight. So they said, this is a no-brainer. We will just pound Pennsylvania to turn our seats around, flip our seats, and the other ones we can work a little harder at. And that really galls me.
Yeah, it's offensive. That should fire everybody up, no matter,
Yeah.
where you land on the spectrum.
I was just going to mention Daryl Metcalf because he was the state government
Chairman.
House chair,
Mhm.
and he didn't allow any of the bills to even come to the floor for a vote, even though they had majority support and support from both parties. In fact, he didn't let any. I don't think he let any Democratic bills come through at all. Period. And I'm sorry to say, John, he got transferred to the environment group. He was taken off of the gerrymandering issue. What's his position now? I think he's like chair of the environment.
Chair of the State Environment Committee.
State
yeah.
environment. So
Yeah.
now the environmental people have him to deal with.
Great.
Well, he's also running for re-election. He's running against, I think, a guy named Dan Smith up in Cranberry.
Yes.
I'm curious, what's your volunteer pool look like these days in Erie County, in Crawford County?
Well, in Erie County, initially, Carol Kunaholm, who was the chair and co-founder of Fair Districts PA, also she's back on the state league board as the public policy person. She came up and did a big presentation at the Blasco Library, and I think a lot of people signed the petition at that time, and there was this big database of individuals who said they wanted to volunteer and help. So we had, I don't know how many volunteers we had in Erie County, but we had a nice group of speakers that we could call on when we would line something up, and then somebody else would go along and be their second and get petitions signed and talk to the people afterwards and that sort of thing. We have a pretty good setup going. Now I think there's still a small group of people that have regular meetings, right, Don?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Pamela and Janice and others are
Pamela's
part
an
of that.
original. She was our first volunteer, and she came and said, I'd like to do something. I'd like to be the administrative assistant, and she's still at it.
That's awesome. I'm curious if there's an organization that would be interested in who would they contact to maybe have a Zoom with one of you or someone for their next meeting to learn more about this and learn how gerrymandering is most likely affecting their cause as well.
Well, in Erie, they can contact Pamela. In Crawford, they can contact me. In Mercer, they can contact Luann. We have active groups also in Warren, and Venango, Clarion, Lawrence. I think that about does it for our Northwest PA group. I'd be happy, John, I'd be happy to be a conduit for making sure people get connected to whatever county group would be appropriate for them. So if you want me to put out a phone number or an email address here, I can do that, or however you want to handle it.
Yeah, sure. Maybe.
Should I do it in the chat?
Yeah. Oh, and obviously we can point people to fairdistrictspa.com
Yep.
As well. Yeah, I mean, I just really appreciate everything that you all are doing. Any last comments for anyone on the panel or guests?
Hey, more power to you. Thanks for the hard work. It's endless, and hopefully, eventually gratifying for you. But it's hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
I think it's going to happen one day. I really do.
Yes, it's 18 states, according to the film, 18 states are putting forward initiatives to do this. So it's gaining momentum.
Virginia recently did.
Ohio recently did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with Virginia, it wasn't exactly what they wanted, but again, it's that step forward, step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
I told people when the bills didn't go through at the end of the session that I worked with, people got very discouraged and they wanted to give up. And I mean, I left that position, but I still work on the issue through the league. And, I said, the women who wanted the right to vote, they worked for 7 decades. They didn't give up. Things take time and it's hard and it's, but good things, it's going to take some time to get it done. It's going to take another 10 years maybe to get it done till the next.
It'll happen. It'll happen. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think John Lyons and Erica will see it. I'm not sure the rest of us will necessarily be still around when it happens, but it will happen.
Hey, Dawn. I hope it happens in the.
Sorry,
in the
Lori,
next
I didn't
10
mean to
years.
throw you under the bus there.
Hey,
we don't know
I'll be
what.
first to tell you, well, whether I'm alive or not, somebody else is going to be getting petition signatures then.
Right.
Not me.
Nobody knows what tomorrow brings, right?
Yeah. But, don't give up on Fair Districts PA for now, because even if we can't get this done, because we've had the experience of the bills shut down, there are other bills in they keep working. Carol said at a teleconference on Tuesday that no matter what happens, we will have better maps
And
next time around.
Katie in the film, she prepared people for a possible failure, and they didn't
Yes.
have that. They had a success, but there's going to be.
Well, one thing is for sure, people are so aware now about how this gerrymandering, this extreme gerrymandering impacts them, that they are not going to be able to do it in secret anymore. So there are criteria bills that are being formulated, and they'll be demanding, if they can't get the Independent Citizens Commission, Fair Districts PA will keep grinding it forward, so that it is actually better, and they should not ever be able to repeat that performance of 2010 again.
I think a lot of the House representatives that are running in Erie County have opponents. Not all of them, but some of them do. And, vote for the one that wants fair districts. That's one way to spend your vote. Look it up and
and volunteer for the candidate.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm pretty sure Park Wentling has an opponent, and maybe Brad Roy. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Matt Ferentz.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Because I just looked these up not too long ago. So, I mean, if everybody just voted for the other guy because he supports, like I was talking to somebody today that really likes Senator Laughlin. He's a great guy. He's like a moderate, he's a lot of people like him, likable person, but he doesn't support fair districts. So maybe you take your vote and you give it to somebody else that does support fair districts.
That's yeah. It's hard. I hate to do that to Mark Longetti, my House legislator, because he really does wonderful things, but he's not a supporter.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody ever runs against him either. So
Yeah.
I have to bite my lip when I really have to think hard about, making an election issue with him. But, well, that said, I don't know what to do about that.
Well, everyone should definitely consider this issue strongly. I think that's a great takeaway for this conversation. It's an election year. It's a very important year. Look up the candidates, see where they lie on this issue, and see if you think it's important.
I will tell you, though, the ones that are in safe seats, they don't bother answering the surveys like Vote 411 or votespa.gov because they don't have to.
That's a tragedy.
Yeah.
That should be telling.
Yeah. So if they didn't answer, that probably means they don't support it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's downright arrogant
Mm-hmm.
not to even make a move to say something about that. And it's tragic.
Well, Lorraine, Dawn, Luann, thank you all so much for all of your hard work and for taking some time to educate us and our future listeners and watchers as well. So
you're all ambassadors now.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, I know I'm going to invite you to some groups if you're able to. So education, I think, is key. So thank you, and thanks to Magnolia for letting us show this film.
Yes.
Thank you, John, and thank you,
Thank you,
Erica.
John.
Thanks for the opportunity.